Hello and welcome to First 5 Years Fund's new First 5 Questions series, where we talk to experts, champions, and leaders about the challenges and solutions associated with early childhood education in the United States today. My name is Sarah Rittling. I'm the Executive Director of the First 5 Years Fund, a bipartisan advocacy organization working to sustain and expand federal support for childcare and early learning. Our guests today are two incredible congressional champions for America's littlest learners and their families. They're also very busy, so we're most fortunate to have them here to discuss an issue I know they both hold near and dear to their heart: childcare and pre-K. They're here as co-chairs of the Congressional Bipartisan Pre-K and Childcare Caucus, which they lead with Congresswoman Bonamici of Oregon and Hinson of Iowa. We are joined by the founder of the caucus, Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas. While in Congress, he's fought tirelessly for every child to have the opportunity to benefit from quality early learning, particularly those through expanded access to pre-K. And Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania, who for years has led the charge in finding bipartisan solutions to a range of issues in Congress, the least of which is helping children and families in Pennsylvania. Congressman, welcome, and thank you for being the inaugural guests for this new series. We're so excited to have you join us today.
Good to be with you.
Great. We're going to kick it right off with question number one, and we are going to start that with you, Congressman Fitzpatrick. Of all the issues you could be involved in for the country and your district, why early learning and childcare?
Well, thanks for having us, first of all. There is no more important responsibility that we have, not just as elected leaders, but as human beings, and to take care of our kids. It's the most important investment we can make. Our youth represent roughly a quarter of our population, but 100% of our future. And when it comes to early learning, pre-K, those are the formative years of a child's brain. It's perhaps the most important time in their development. And it's the most important investment we need to make is to give them exposure to a whole host of developmental opportunities to make sure that they're prepared to be a really, really great student once they start school and ultimately a great member of the workforce in our country. So there's a lot of money that gets thrown around DC. Some are expenses, other are investments. This is probably the most important investment we can make. Moreover, giving parents an affordable option of childcare, which is one of the huge problems. We have a supply and demand issue. We have a workforce shortage in all industries, including in daycare centers themselves and early learning centers. So we have to also focus on that to make that a more attractive option for people that want to go into that profession, but also people who want to work elsewhere and have their kids have facilities available to them so that the parents can work. So, we deal with a lot of important issues in DC for sure. I can't think of anyone that's more important than this, because both from the parent standpoint and the child standpoint, very, very important.
Congressman Castro, anything to add on that first question?
Well, no, Sarah, I want to first say thank you so much for hosting us and for all the work that the First 5 Years Fund has done for years now. And it's great to be on with Brian and great to be one of the co-chairs with him in this endeavor. And, I really got involved in this issue. And you're right, in Congress, as Brian knows, there are just a million different issues that you can focus on. And you usually end up really focusing on just a few and voting on many other things, obviously. But the reasons for me were both personal and then professional. The professional one first, my brother was mayor in San Antonio when he put up to the voters of San Antonio a 1/8 cent sales tax increase to fund pre-K programs across the city of San Antonio. And so that program, known as Pre-K for SA, makes San Antonio, I believe it's still the largest city in Texas with the most pre-K offerings and the most pre-K students enrolled. And then just personally, my wife and I have 3 kids. And even though for a few years now, she has stayed home with them, we also at times have paid for childcare. And I know how expensive it is for families and how much the cost has risen over the years, which has made it tougher, particularly in the last few years. And so that's the reason that I started it several years ago with Democrats and Republicans, and the reason that I continue to be involved.
We're most fortunate that you are. So question number 2, and we'll turn this to you, Congressman Castro. Congressman Fitzpatrick, you said investments. The two of you actually have teamed up on a funding request specific to early learning. And the preschool development grant birth through 5 program, which we commonly refer to as PDG B5, rolls right off the tongue.
Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with the program, it's really an infrastructure program. It is helping states build much needed systems that talk to each other, create some efficiencies, and streamline things at the state level. Can you share a little bit more with us about the importance of the program and why you've chosen to lead, particularly on the funding side, with your partner here?
Yeah, no, the PDG B5 grants and monies are incredibly important for the states for a few reasons. As you said, it's essential to the infrastructure of childcare in Texas. And we're a state government, to put it kindly, that has been very stingy at times in the kinds of public services that we fund and other services that we fund. And so the federal government being involved in helping on that has been incredibly important. But then secondly, the aspect of training that's involved for childcare workers and the ability to use the monies for those purposes has been incredibly important, so that childcare workers are best able to help kids learn at such an early age. So it's not only having a place for kids to be, but making sure that while they're there, they're getting the best care possible, and hopefully also learning something as well.
Anything to add, Congressman Fitzpatrick?
Yeah, I mean, as far as PDGB5 goes, look no further than the fact that every single governor in America has sought to avail themselves of these funds. It's incredibly important. It goes specifically to infrastructure, but also workforce development. You know, every single governor, every mayor, they want a robust workforce, and in order to have a robust workforce, you have to have, you know, adequate and affordable pre-K and childcare. There's no way around that. So it's no surprise that every single governor has sought to avail themselves of these funds. I can tell you in my home state of Pennsylvania, this has been a very, very heralded program, one that the governor, our governor, Josh Shapiro, has spoken up a lot about, you know, his support for this program, which we're very thankful for.
On that note, every governor having sought funds to support their programs, the two of you here chairing a bipartisan caucus, the issue is historically one that is bipartisan, and unfortunately, the window that many people have on DC isn't as bipartisan. So it's always wonderful to showcase an area that people probably don't realize as much from where they sit out in America, and would love to hear your take. We'll start with you, Congressman Fitzpatrick, since you are Mr. Bipartisan in problem solving of all things. Why it is that this issue seems to bring everybody together?
Because it's kids. If kids don't bring people together, I don't know what will. And you know, everybody, no matter what party they affiliate with, you know, anybody who has kids who's in the workforce has to deal with this issue. Costs are becoming very, very expensive, in many cases cost prohibitive, and that's a real problem. You know, we talk about both childcare and healthcare. You know, when costs become prohibitive, it's more than just a service level problem. It has a ripple effect across a lot of different other areas. And if you can't afford to bring, to have a place to bring your child to, then you can't work. And if you can't work, you're going to have a hard time affording daily living expenses, and it also hurts industries across the board who can't fully staff their operations. So it's one of those genesis issues that you really have to invest money in it. If you don't, it has a ripple effect across a lot of different areas.
Congressman Castro.
What we found over the years is that childcare is one of the biggest demands that we hear from constituents, especially when I was in the state legislature, because I served 10 years in the state legislature before coming over to Congress. But people would scramble trying to figure out how they were going to place a child in childcare, and oftentimes more and more now, how they were going to afford it. And that's true really almost anywhere you go in the United States, in so-called red districts or blue districts. People really are scrambling and trying to figure out how to pay for childcare. And so expanding it, making it affordable, and expanding pre-K as well, those are all important issues, really, regardless of political party. And fortunately, childcare to me is one of those issues in Congress that to some degree has been above partisanship, along with veterans issues, for example, and other issues, a few other issues. And so that's been a good thing in terms of trying to get things done.
Question 4. What's the one thing you wish more of your colleagues knew about childcare pre-K? Start with you, Congressman Castro.
Yeah, I would say the cost and how much the cost has gone up. You're talking about in many places, the cost of childcare is the cost of almost a one-bedroom condo in Washington, D.C., renting a one-bedroom condo in Washington, D.C. I mean, it has gone up incredibly, or even in some places making a mortgage payment. And so the cost has been very high. And without some of these monies and programs, those costs would have to be borne by the families alone, or they might even be higher.
It's incredible. Congressman Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, I'd say in addition to the cost, just the science of childhood development, both from a social standpoint and a mental standpoint, and the difference in outcomes. This is provable that the more you invest in a child in their formative years, in social development and mental development, the outcomes are markedly different than children who do not have that exposure and that experience. And it's the easiest case to make as to why, for a lot of people that complain about, investing in these items, what the cost of not doing it is. Not only is it the right moral thing to do from a moral imperative, but also across the board, economic and across the board for developing a solid workforce. And educational outcomes are better, workforce outcomes are better. There's a direct linear correlation between investing in early childhood education and daycare, and those experiences and how they fare in life.
Question 5. We're going to make it a 2-part question, so we don't go beyond our 5 questions. Part 1 is there a caretaker in your life, either yours or your children or your nieces and nephews, that's made an impact on how you see this issue? And 2, what gives you hope? And we'll start with you, Congressman Fitzpatrick.
Well, my mom would be the most impactful. She was able to stay home. That was in a different time, different generation. She's 89 years old now. Thankful to still have her with us. But things have changed now. Not many parents are able to do that, are not able to stay at home. So the ones that can, that's a blessing. But for the parents who are not able to do that, it's exhibit A as to why these programs are so important. Why am I hopeful? We live in the greatest country in the world, despite all of our challenges and struggles. Everybody still wants to come here. Nobody's looking to move to China or Russia or Iran or North Korea. Everybody wants to come to the United States, and there's a reason for that. So, we have the ability to figure these things out as long as there's cooperation, which is why it's so important that this task force, this caucus is very bipartisan.
Congressman Castro.
Yeah, I would say my grandmother was incredibly impactful for me. My parents were together till I was 8, but my grandmother lived with us in the house until I went away for college. And my grandmother really stopped working when my brother and I were born, mostly so that she could take care of us. And and so she was, aside from my parents, obviously, the most influential person in my life growing up, and sacrificed so much to take care of my brother and I. And her being there allowed my parents, and then of course my mom, who was a single parent after the age of 8, to be able to go and work and do everything she needed to do to provide for us and to support us. And so she was a childcare provider for us. And then in terms of what gives me hope, well, conversations like this, the fact that it's a bipartisan issue, that we're able in what is a very hyper-partisan environment in Congress on some issues to rise above that. And so I'm hopeful that in this session in the coming years, that we'll be able to make some great headway for the American people on childcare and also pre-K.
Well, thank you so much for every single thing that you do on the issue and more. And we teed this conversation up and said you were congressional champions, but after today, I hope everybody sees you aren't just champions, you're actual like downright experts on the issue, from the brain science to the cost to the reasons why. And we're really fortunate to have you in Congress doing this. So I express my gratitude from the entire early learning community and certainly from the First 5 Years Fund, and go get them. Thank you.